I don't necessarily take for gospel that there was a necessary trade on the table that would have sent Carmelo Anthony to the Clippers, and the only reason Doc Rivers said no, if he did say no, is because Austin Rivers was involved. Who knows? Maybe that trade was just being kicked around, and Doc was like, nah, I don't think we're getting enough in return. Maybe that was just something that somebody heard from somewhere else, that was a potential discussion, and maybe the Knicks backed out on that. I'm not going to sit here and say for certain that's the reason that all of this came apart. But I do believe there was probably the idea from Chris Paul's standpoint that Austin Rivers was being favorited, and that doesn't sound crazy. Doesn't sound crazy at all. Now, I think also Chris Paul probably had some friction with Doc Rivers. I think Paul is pretty competitive, and Chris Paul saw his buddy LeBron James surrounded with winning, and more winning, and got really frustrated that he hasn't even been to a Western Conference Finals. He's one of the banana boat boys. Dwayne Wade wins. LeBron James wins. Even Carmelo's been to a Western Conference Final. Chris Paul's never been out of the second round. I think Chris Paul didn't love Blake Griffin. I think Chris Paul didn't love Doc Rivers. And I think Chris Paul is kind of a backroom politician. And so I think there was friction there. There was animosity there. He went to Doc and said, you know what? This ain't working anymore. We can't win like this. And I think Doc probably got bent out of shape, saying, what, you think you can win in Houston easier than here? If you stay here, we're a better team than Houston is if you don't go there. And so I think the way that it's gone down is that Chris Paul has likely, through his back channels, started to create the narrative. They can't win because of Doc. They can't win because of Austin Rivers. They can't win because of that whole thing. And I think Doc and probably the rest of the Clippers are bent out of shape. And for Doc to say, hey, Chris was on this team too, says, don't throw the responsibility at us. You were part of this. And I agree. I think Chris Paul is overrated. I do. Do I think he's a top 10 player in the NBA? Yeah, I do. But I think he's overrated in this sense. He's not winning either. He hasn't won either. And this idea that Chris Paul was held down by everything that happened in L.A., well, great players elevate their teams, especially when you touch the basketball in every possession. I think Chris Paul has tremendous State Farm commercials, and he plays the good guy, and he's well-spoken, and he has friends around the league, and I think that leads people in the inner circles to believe he's better than he is when it matters. When it matters. Because when it matters, Chris Paul hasn't had great games either. Chris Paul hasn't had great series either. When you look at the analytics and you look at the metrics, it bears out that, yes, Chris Paul is very good. Great. Future Hall of Famer? Yes. Helped lead the Clippers to their best run in 6 years that they've ever had as a franchise, which isn't saying much, but it is what it is. But when it came to winning when it mattered most, don't tell me the Clippers didn't have enough talent to be better than what they were. Yeah, they had some injuries. They had some bad luck. They had some dark clouds over them. But Chris Paul also, if you're the floor leader, if you're the floor general, you've got to make it work. You're the key to all of this. And if you have friction with the coach, and you have friction with Blake Griffin, you have friction with Austin Rivers, guess what? Some of that is on you. I think Doc, as I said yesterday, should cook the meal, never be able to shop for the ingredients. And I think Doc is stung right now because he realizes this whole thing is over and they underachieved. But pointing the finger at either side shows why the Clippers couldn't win. Chris Paul's looking at them going, they're the reason, Doc's the reason, I had to leave. And Doc is looking at Chris saying, you were part of this mess, or you were part of the losing. Don't blame us. Does that not show at all of why the Clippers never won? Right there crystallizes everything about the Clippers not getting it done.